She thought the worst thing in her life was fetching beer for a man who barely noticed she existed, until she woke up in a strange room, claimed by a man who said she was his now. Meanwhile, the husband she thought would search for her moves on with her sister, abandoning her to a twisted fate. The lines between captor and savior blur as survival turns into a cruel game, and the true nightmare begins. What started as a mundane existence has spiraled into a terrifying struggle for control, with no clear way out.
It's going to be a little weird when me, a man, to tell the story. But just enjoy the story, it's really great. As I walked up to the gate of the big house, I felt so nervous that my hands were shaking. I wasn't sure how they would react to seeing me, or if they would even want to see me. But deep down, I felt like this was home. I thought they might be surprised or maybe just interested, but really, who could say? I never imagined I would try to come back here again. It didn't quite make sense, but I knew this was where I was meant to be. By the time someone reaches my age, which is 24, they usually have an idea of where they belong in life. Young women from wealthy families often go to college at 18, ready to start their careers. So if you measure me by their standards, I'm a bit behind. However, if you look at me based on life experiences instead of careers, I've done a lot. I got married right after I turned 18, and my husband and I had our own place. Well, to be fair, it was his place. And yes, it was a trailer. He was 40 years old, but that was the only life I had ever known. Every girl I knew wanted the same things. We wanted to leave our parents' houses and get married so we could have control over our own lives. We dreamed of making our own choices and deciding when to do things. Most of us understood that our husbands would technically be in charge, but we thought men were easy to handle, especially for someone like me who grew up in the mountains. Even if we were a few generations away from that life, it didn't matter. We believed that we could influence men by being supportive and kind, which was something most of us wanted to do anyway. So I married Zeke because he was a friend of my dad's and he was always nice to me. I thought I would be the center of Zeke's world. But when the initial excitement faded, reality hit hard. They were paid more for working the same job because night shifts were tougher. In reality, they were mostly alone during the night because the supervisors left at 7 p.m. after giving them their tasks. They really worked for just about an hour until the foreman went home. After that, they took a break and relaxed until it was almost time to finish. One night, Zeke and his brothers were sitting in the warehouse, enjoying some refreshments and listening to a baseball game while they waited for the foreman to leave. That night, a new high-low driver had just started. While they laughed and joked about his inexperience, he accidentally knocked over a stack of parts, and it landed on them. The warehouse foreman was walking by when it happened, so he saw everything unfold. The pallet was stacked high with boxes of small parts, and when it fell, the brothers tumbled to the ground. By the time the foreman arrived, Zeke was ready to impress him. His two brothers jumped up quickly, eager to show they were fine. They didn't want the foreman to find out they had been having refreshments while working. Zeke used this chance to show how clever he could be. As the foreman turned to him, Zeke said 3 simple words. These words stuck with him for the rest of his life, much like a famous idea by a smart man. Now those words are well known around our trailer park. Looking up at the foreman, Zeke said, "Oh, my back." That moment changed everything, and now Zeke has been enjoying his paychecks ever since. There was nothing really wrong with Zeke. He still enjoys hunting, fishing, and joking around with the guys in the neighborhood. But every 6 months, he visits a doctor and talks about some discomfort he feels. The discomfort has become quite pronounced, so the doctors have prescribed him medication. He receives it through his disability, and then he gives it to others in the trailer park. One of my jobs, like any good wife's, is to ensure Zeke never runs out of refreshments. So I go to the convenience store almost every day to keep our fridge stocked. One morning, Zeke kicked me awake and looked down at me with frustration. As I opened my eyes, I saw his unshaven face and wondered why he had woken me. "We're out of beer," he said sharply. "Why did I marry you? You don't seem to do much. How did you let us run out?" "I don't even drink it," I replied without thinking. Suddenly, a sharp pain hit me, and I felt disoriented for a moment. I got up, holding my face, and slipped on my old flip-flops. I put on my jeans and pulled a worn t-shirt over my head before walking out the door. I stepped out of the trailer and down onto a cinder block, which I used as a step. It was already over 80 degrees outside. Inside the trailer, it felt cooler because of the shade and a fan blowing warm air around. I carefully jumped over the mud that always gathered around the trailer in the warm season and started my walk. The 7-Eleven was almost a mile away, and I wanted to get back before the sun rose fully and made it even hotter. As I walked through the park toward the road, I waved and nodded to many of my neighbors. Some people who had more money were inside their trailers watching TV. Those who had less were on their porches, observing passers-by. I felt their eyes on me as I walked by. A few of them wanted to chat, but I didn't have time for that. I could see that some of the older men were not pleased with my choice of clothing. They seemed to prefer younger individuals in different attire. For them, it might have been the easiest way to express their preferences. I think I look nice in a simple way. My teeth are all there and in good shape. My hair is long, full, and a golden color, a blend of blonde and brown. At 5'2", I'm just the right height. I have an average body shape, and my grandma used to say that anything more than you can hold in one hand is too much. I have nice hips and a round shape for my size. Overall, I guess my body is just average. Being average is good. It means I'm not too big or too small. I'm in the middle. Usually, when something is good and bigger than normal, there's often a downside. Susie Smith has received attention in the trailer park for her figure, but she also faces jokes about her proportions. Some guys in the neighborhood make light of her situation. Zeke often recounts a humorous story about a time he meant to compliment her but ended up making an awkward mistake. He says you can't really tell where her back ends and her hips begin. Other residents joke about her not being able to use a chair comfortably. Despite Susie's curvy figure, she's never had a steady boyfriend. Guys will come over, look at her, and maybe engage in light conversation, then they leave to do something else. So maybe being average is not so bad after all. As I walked down the street, I noticed that as I got closer to the main road, there was a lot more traffic. A few guys acknowledged me as they drove past, but my face hurt so much that I didn't smile at anyone. I knew I would have a big bruise by the time I got home, but I couldn't complain too much. It was my own fault for not watching what I said. I grew up in a place where things like that were pretty common. My dad loved my mom a lot. Unlike many people around us, they never strayed from each other. My dad cared for my mom deeply, and my mom was always cautious. I often saw my dad get frustrated with my mom if she didn't act the way he wanted. He always told us that respect is one of the few things a person truly has. So, if my mom upset him or spoke against him, he felt it was his responsibility to correct her. That morning, the parking lot of the 7-Eleven was already busy. They really should think about having a drive-through like those nice fast food places. There were no parking spaces open, so cars were parked in the middle of the lanes. That morning, I saw many nice cars and trucks in the parking lot. I stopped to look at them. I imagined one of them was mine, and that I could drive away from the old trailer park. Then I chuckled when I noticed how busy the store was inside. Suddenly, I realized that with so many people there, they might run out of supplies. I stopped my daydream and hurried inside. Zeke wasn't in a good mood with me this morning. The pain on the left side of my face showed that. If I came home without any beverages, things would be much worse. I pushed my way into the packed store and moved to the back where the drink coolers were. From how the store was arranged, it was clear they really wanted you to buy their expensive fountain drinks and Slurpees. The beer and soft drinks were way at the back of the store. As I made my way to the coolers, I felt some unwanted brushes against me more than once. It seemed like some truck drivers or other guys were taking the chance to invade my personal space. Every time I felt someone bump into me, I quickly looked around, but none of them met my gaze. When I reached the cooler, I felt a wave of worry. Zeke only drank shots beer, and the part of the cooler that usually held it was almost empty, with only 2 bottles left. I knew that if I came home with less than a whole case, Zeke wouldn't be happy. I hurriedly checked the cooler to see if the stock boys had moved the shots somewhere else. "Hey, Victoria!" called a voice from behind me. I turned around to see Chester Crawdad. Chester and I had been in school together for years. He was always the oddest guy I knew. Chester had been acting unusually nice to me lately. I wanted to believe that he had matured a bit, but it was hard to ignore that his change in behavior coincided with the warmer weather when I stopped wearing my coat. On that day, I considered letting Chester assist me, hoping it would help avoid any trouble for not bringing home the drinks. "This might be a good day for you, pretty lady," Chester said, his tone making me uneasy. "It could be a good day for me, too," he added. I masked my discomfort as I responded, "How could it be a good day for both of us, Chester?" "Because there might be a box of shots in the back, hidden away just for you to buy," he said with an unsettling smile. "Okay, bring it out," I replied. "I'll meet you at the counter." "Not so fast," he said. "That would only make it a good day for you. What about me?" "Come on, Chester," I sighed. "Can't you just do this as a friendly favor?" "When have we ever been friends?" he replied with a grin. "This is me being nice. I do something good for you, and you do something good for me. It can be beneficial for both of us." "All right, Chester," I said, feeling a bit defeated. "What are you looking for?" He stepped closer and spoke softly, ensuring only I could hear. "I want to know something special. You understand, right?" "I'm not doing that here," I said firmly. It felt clear that he wanted to get closer to me in a way I wasn't comfortable with. "Of course not," he replied. "Just come with me to the back of the store like we're going to get your drinks." With just the two of us in the shop and the manager preoccupied, I nodded and walked through the door marked "Employees Only." I didn't feel like I was doing anything wrong, as Zeke often had me help out with various tasks. As we entered the quiet area meant for employees, Chester's demeanor shifted. "Not so high and mighty now, are you?" he remarked. "You probably thought I wanted to get close to you, didn't you? Just so you know, there are others out there who would make you look ordinary." I felt uneasy, and by the time I sensed something was off, it was too late. As I followed Chester toward a crate of Schott's beer, an unexpected presence loomed behind me, and I felt a sudden rush of fear. I inhaled a strong-smelling chemical that made my legs feel weak, like a baby's. I felt like I was falling, but I never hit the ground. The last thing I saw was Chester's smiling face, but there was something off about his smile. Adam, today was the day. It marked the start of a long journey that I hoped would lead to a better life. For the last 5 years since I left the military, since I took care of a problem that came up after I got home, I had focused on building my family business. I hired, or at least tried to hire, a lot of guys like me, who had served and come back only to face sadness or a lack of opportunity. Now, I had a team of loyal workers who would go to great lengths for me when things got tough, and things were definitely tough. I felt very lonely, almost like it was a weight on me. I worked hard to help my community, but when I went home to a big, empty house, it all felt pointless. People are not meant to be alone. Loneliness can be as harmful as a serious illness. It slowly eats at you until you feel like you're just a shadow of your former self. My issue was that my past experiences made it hard for me to trust others. So signing up for a dating site like eHarmony didn't feel right to me. I thought it was all nonsense. I would laugh at the commercials, but my loneliness only grew stronger. Throughout history, men have found many ways to meet women. Who says that the way we do it now is the best way? Why couldn't I go back to the simpler days? Why couldn't I just go out and find someone, even if it meant being a bit adventurous? What about the Native Americans, the Vikings, and early Europeans? Why couldn't I just pursue the connection I wanted? Deep down, I knew this idea was wrong. I understood there were laws against it and many good reasons why it was not right. But I also thought that with my trust issues, this might be the only way to avoid being alone. The first step was to plan everything, including how I would escape. The truth is, even in our modern society, some things never change. If you have enough money, you can get away with a lot. I started creating a new identity for myself. It wasn't as difficult as I thought. Through friends who still worked in the service, I met other people in different government jobs. Before long, I found myself living as two people. Just in case my plan didn't work, I made a new identity for myself to blend in with everyone else. After figuring out my escape plan, I needed to find the right person to connect with. I looked at women for weeks and picked 3. This part was easy because I chose them based on how appealing I found them and their traits. Any woman I wasn't drawn to was dropped from my list. Out of those 3, I crossed one off because she was truly in love with her husband. This left me with 2 choices, one of whom was single. The other woman had only been married for a few years, and she seemed overwhelmed in her marriage. It looked like her husband sometimes hurt her. I chose the single woman anyway because I believed that a marriage is a serious commitment. Even after my own experiences, I didn't want to cause problems in someone else's marriage. Her name was Elsa, and she lived just a couple of miles away from me. She worked as a nurse's assistant, and she was quite pretty. I had people following her every day, so I knew her schedule and where she'd be most of the time. Then everything changed. She lost her job, which I thought might help me. But soon we learned the reason she was let go. She had been misusing medication from the hospital. I wasn't interested in someone who had such issues, so I started looking at someone else. My feelings changed. Maybe it was just my loneliness that was growing, but I began to think that being married to a man who hurt her wasn't a good situation at all. This morning, I woke up with a feeling that my life was going to change. I smiled because it wasn't the first time I had thought this. The first time was in a little church in Michigan. Friends and family came together to see me marry my high school sweetheart. I think every man feels something special when he invites a woman into his life like that. Today, my life was going to change. I started my day at work like usual. I felt a little nervous, but I tried to act normal. I think I did well until the phone call came. I was sitting at a table with some of my managers when my assistant walked in. She told me the deal was done. I quickly excused myself and drove home. Driving is usually fun for me. I can buy almost any car I want. But as a kid, I loved old muscle cars. Right now, I drive a 2012 Shelby GT 500 Mustang. I really like that car, but today it was just a way to get where I needed to go. As I drove into my neighborhood and slowed down, the car's powerful engine made a loud sound that turned into a low growl. I waved to some of my neighbors before turning into my long and curved driveway. When I walked into the house, I took my time. The front door opened, and a man and a woman around my age were standing there. The man looked at me and nodded. "Simple and easy," he said. I followed them into the kitchen. I opened a door to a big pantry. The pantry had shelves stretching from the floor to the ceiling. They were filled with all sorts of food. Some shelves held cooking tools, pots, and special appliances. The back wall was covered with shiny pans hanging from hooks, using up a lot of space. Everything in that room was there for one main reason. If you asked most people, they would say it was cooking, but that wasn't true. The pantry was a secret door. The tall shelves were there so you couldn't see how it opened. I used a remote that looked like a garage door opener to unlock it. Then I went down a short set of stairs and stood in front of another big door. I opened it and stepped inside. The two big doors were connected so that only one could open at a time. Inside, I found a very large room. It was bigger than most small apartments. It had a spacious bathroom and even a small kitchen. On the bed, there was a young woman. She appeared pleasant but seemed unaware of it. She was 4 years younger than me, and while she didn't seem to realize it, she was now my responsibility. Zeke turned to Reb, feeling frustrated. "Where is she?" I asked. "That girl has been gone for almost an hour and a half. It doesn't take that long to go to the store and get some drinks." "Why are you asking me?" he replied with a grunt. "She's your wife, not mine." He looked around for something to spit his tobacco into. When he couldn't find anything, he stepped outside and spat on the ground before sitting down on a block that was used as a step. "Wow, it's hot out here," he said. "Maybe she had some trouble trying to carry everything back. You probably should have gone yourself, or at least let her use your truck." "After the way she talked back to me this morning?" I replied angrily. "She's lucky I even let her keep her sense of respect. She's too ungrateful for everything I've done for her." "I told you from the start that Victoria wasn't the right girl for you, Zeke," he said. "She read too many books when she was young. It gave her too many ideas." I remembered how I mentioned my best sister, Tammy. She was named after Tammy Wynette, and if she knew how to do anything, it was how to support her partner. "Tammy's figure is too big," I said. "Well, when you get Victoria expecting, her body is going to change too," laughed Reb. "But that might help her see things differently. When you welcome a child, it can shift perspectives." "Yeah, it's not like I haven't been trying," I said, "but I'm not as young as I used to be." Zeke," said Reb, "we need to have a serious talk." I felt nervous, but nodded. "Zeke, my dad was your best friend, so you're like family," he started. "I'm not sure how to say this. It's a tricky situation, but I brought up Tammy for a reason. They always say that the good Lord will help us solve our problems. They also say that a man's home is his castle, right?" I nodded, but I glanced at Reb, trying to figure out what he was getting at. "Zeke, maybe it's not you," he said. What do you mean? I asked. Do you and Victoria spend time together a lot? He asked. Probably not as much as I'd like, I replied. But we do find time to connect now and then. And that's exactly my point, brother-in-law, he said. She should have at least a couple of kids by now, if not more. You're right, I said. And clearly, you're not getting enough time with Victoria, but you won't stand up to her, he said. You're too lenient with her, really. I nodded in agreement. But a man needs to take care of his needs, Zeke, he continued. That's in the Bible somewhere, so no one would blame you if you looked somewhere else for what you need. He looked me in the eye, and I blinked. I thought so, he said. And I also think you did it in a very caring way for the family, didn't you? I guess, I replied. I'm sorry, Reb, but He raised his hand to stop me. Zeke, nobody is upset. You're getting what you need. Tammy, who has been by herself since Denny left and sadly died in Iraq, is as happy as can be, and until now, nobody else knew. I nodded, sensing there would be a but coming. But, he said, just like I expected, something is about to change. My heart sank. And that something seems to be Tammy's situation. Even if she's a bit heavy, you've gotten the wrong sister in a complicated position. It made me wonder if the issue with you and Victoria lies elsewhere. Maybe my little sister just can't have kids. I mean, you two have been married for 5 years now, and even if you say she just doesn't want to be close, something should have happened by now. I nodded in agreement. I really wish your father were still here, I said. He was a good man. If he sold you a bad pig, he would fix it, and... He raised his hand again to stop me. I'm going to make this right too, he said. But this isn't as simple as trading pigs. My dad would have just given you another pig. He gazed into the distance for a moment. I've got it, he said. You can also have Tammy. What? I asked in surprise. You're still married to Victoria, but we know there are problems there. You could go through all the trouble of getting a divorce, and really, you shouldn't have to deal with her issues. You've been patient for so long with someone who struggles a lot. It's very generous of you. But if you divorce her, you'll have to give her half of what you own. It might be easier to just keep her, but you can take Tammy too. What? I repeated, confused. Think about it this way, he said. Victoria isn't very interested in being close. Tammy is. Victoria seems unable to have kids, so some people think she isn't much help, just there to look nice. But even that can be a problem because she can be outspoken. So why not also take Tammy? He continued. Then you get the best of both. One supportive person and another who can take on responsibilities. You could let Tammy have a space close by and let Victoria manage on her own. At least that way, you'd have someone to help with everything that comes with raising a family. He gave me a friendly slap on the shoulder and smiled. I'll leave it to you to break the news to them, he added. Don't worry about Tammy, she's agreeable. And Victoria could use a little encouragement anyway. Man, thinking about this is tough work. Where's the drinks? 2 hours later, our mood had shifted from annoyed to frustrated to just plain gloomy. Let's go get her, he said. I nodded in agreement. We jumped into my Dodge Ram pickup and drove to the 7-Eleven. It was so hot that you could cook an egg on the pavement, and we didn't have any drinks. Victoria was really making me frustrated. I searched the whole store and found lots of drinks, but no sign of Victoria. I grabbed a case of beer from the cooler. It wasn't very cold, so it hadn't been there for long. When I got to the checkout, I saw that kid behind the register. I think his name was Chester. He went to school with Victoria when they were younger, and he always seemed interested in her. Chester, do you know when Victoria left here? I asked. He looked at me with a blank stare. Is Victoria coming over here? He asked with a grin. Before I mentioned my wife, he had been all business and too busy to even glance my way. But now he looked eager for any information about her. Chester, she should have been here and back home by now, I said. He shook his head. Victoria hasn't been here. If she had, I would have seen her, he said. Hey, Harlan, he called to an older man who looked bored. Harlan came over to us. What can I help you guys with? He asked in a tired voice. Was Victoria in here earlier? Chester asked. Who? Replied Harlan. You know Victoria, the woman I... Chester started to explain. Oh, that pretty blonde girl you always talk about. Harlan laughed. How would I know? There have been so many people coming in and out today that I can hardly remember who stopped by, let alone specific individuals. But I'll tell you this, She is very pretty, so I think if I had seen her here, I would remember. I thought to myself, so if you really needed me to say it, I'd say she hasn't been here. But if she had been, Chester would have noticed. As he went back to his work, I could feel my frustration rising. That girl took my beer money and wasted it on something foolish. She's probably out buying some new clothes or something, I said through gritted teeth. Don't spoil your wife by being too nice, Reb joked. But while we're here, we might as well pick up some beer, brother-in-law. And look at it this way. Since she really messed up this time, it will be easier for you to tell her that Tammy is moving into your room and she'll have to sleep elsewhere. I guess that's true, I replied. Victoria woke up feeling tired and a bit lost. I looked around and realized I was lying on a very soft and comfortable bed. Aside from my dry mouth and some ringing in my ears, I felt better than I had in a long time. The burning feeling in my face hit me again, and I remembered a confrontation I had that morning. I glanced around and noticed there were no windows in the room. I wondered what time it was. I'm in trouble, I thought. I tried to guess how long I had been gone. I knew I had been asleep for a while. I looked around the room. The first thing I noticed was a large flat-screen TV on the wall. I wished I could stay here long enough to watch that TV. At home, we only had a small TV, and I could only watch it when Zeke allowed me. Most of the time, he watched NASCAR, fishing shows, sports, and other shows. On the other side of the room, I saw a closet that seemed full of clothes. There were many pretty dresses, jackets, and blouses. That's when it hit me. Some really lucky person must live in this room, and they probably brought me here to rest after whatever happened to me. I tried to remember, but it was all a blur. I placed one leg on the floor and attempted to stand up. Everything started to spin around me. That's when I saw him. I sat back down on the bed and looked at him. He looked up from the object he was holding. As his eyes met mine, I saw his face clearly. He was a kind man with gentle eyes. Some attractive individuals can seem aloof, but not him. His eyes were warm and caring. He stood up and walked over to the bed. He smiled at me as if he was truly glad to see me. As he looked at my face, he noticed the bruise on the left side. "Who did this to you?" he asked, sounding concerned. "Oh, it will heal in a few days," I replied. "My husband, Zeke, did this morning. I guess I talked back too much and—" I stopped when I saw that the warmth in his eyes had faded. There was something in his gaze that shifted, revealing a seriousness I hadn't seen before. "He'll never hurt you again," he said calmly. I wish that was true, I chuckled softly. But speaking of that, I should probably go home now. I noticed the kindness in him again, and he shook his head. "Victoria, you are home," he said confidently, "and no one will ever hurt you again, I promise." "Zeke hits me whenever he wants," I replied. "But he's my husband, so he has the right to—" "No one has the right to hurt you, and Zeke is not your husband anymore. Victoria," he paused for a moment. "This is hard for me to say, and I hope one day you can understand. I really hope that over time you'll accept it. But you belong to me now." I started laughing, thinking it must be a joke. Maybe Zeke was playing a trick on me or setting me up for some reality show. I looked around for cameras, but I couldn't find any. "Okay," I said. "I'll go along with this. How long will this joke go on?" "Forever, I hope," he said. I looked into his eyes and saw no sign of laughter. There was also no hint of deception. This man genuinely believed I would stay here. I got up and tried to rush by him on my shaky legs. I reached the big metal door but couldn't open it. There was no handle to turn. "Let me out of here," I shouted. "Let me out right now. When Zeke finds out about this, he's going to be really mad at you. He's probably looking for me right now." He shook his head. "First of all," he said, "Zeke isn't actually searching for you. He waited about 3 hours after you left. Then he drove to the store and got his own drinks. He did ask the clerk about you, but after that, he just went home. You've been gone for a whole day, and he hasn't even called the police yet." I was surprised. I wasn't surprised that Zeke hadn't reported me missing. I was surprised it had been a full day since I disappeared. "If Zeke knows what's best, he will stay away from you," he said. "I might have to confront him for what he did." "Hold on," I said. "You think Zeke is wrong for his actions, but you'd consider taking action against him for it?" He nodded. "You're safe with me now. No one can harm you again." Man, this is America," I replied. "We got rid of slavery a long time ago. No one can own anyone anymore." "I'm not so sure about that," he said. "From the moment you opened those beautiful blue eyes, you captured my heart." His words made me feel fluttery inside, and it wasn't just from whatever they used to knock me out. "But you're mistaken about that, Victoria. While slavery is not allowed here, there are still persistent issues where individuals are exploited in various ways. It's hard to believe, but it's true." "Is that why I'm here?" I shouted. "I won't let anyone use me. I will stand up against any challenges you or others may present." He started laughing so hard that I thought he might fall over. "What's so funny?" I asked, feeling frustrated. "You are incredible," he said through his laughter. "I wish I had met you under different circumstances. Look, Victoria, I didn't go through all this trouble and spend all this money for anything other than getting to know you. If you choose to be with anyone here, it will only be with me." I was taken aback. I couldn't understand why he had gone to all this effort. He was a good-looking guy, and I thought he could easily attract many women just with his smile. From the look of the place I was in, it was clear he had resources. That meant he could attract attention effortlessly. "So, let's talk about how things will go," he said. "I have a different idea," I replied. "You seem to want me for some reason. That's fine, I won't resist. How about I stay with you for a while, and you let me leave afterward?" He looked at me with a sad expression. His face was so full of genuine emotion that I almost started to feel sympathetic, too. "I wanted to start our time together in a nice way," he said gently. "Victoria, I don't have deep feelings for you yet. I've learned a lot about you. I know you appreciate this room because it has things you've said you like. I hope that over time you will come to know me better. But this isn't just about our closeness. You won't be leaving here soon. We will be in each other's company for an extended time." I could see he was sincere. Then he did something I didn't expect at all. He must have found a hidden switch because suddenly the big metal door swung open. I took off without thinking. As I got closer, I felt a strange buzzing sensation. He looked at me with a sad shake of his head. "Later," I thought while I hurried across the soft carpet. I wondered why he wasn't trying to stop me. The buzzing grew louder as I neared the door, wrapping around me. Just a few steps from the freedom outside, the buzzing turned into discomfort. I cried out and started to thrash on the floor. He came over, bent down, and gently picked me up. He carried me away from the door, and the discomfort suddenly stopped. "I'm sorry, Victoria," he said. I could see he genuinely meant it. "Can we talk now?" he asked. I nodded, still feeling a burn along my skin. "Are you hungry?" he continued. "We could eat while we chat. I know you have many questions. What would you like to eat?" "What do you have?" I asked, realizing I was really hungry. "Victoria, my job is to make you happy," he said with a smile. "You can have anything you want." "Then let me go," I replied. "Well, anything except that," he said. "Can I have pizza?" I asked. He smiled and nodded, walking to the wall and pushing a button. A few minutes later, he returned. "We're getting it delivered. It will take about 20 minutes. Why don't you change into something comfortable?" he suggested. "These are all the clothes I have," I replied. "I do have a few more pieces back home, but—" I trailed off as he started laughing again. "Victoria, this is your room," he said. "Everything here is your size and was bought just for you." I stood up and stepped away from the doorway. I looked inside the closet and saw everything arranged by color. I opened a drawer and found all kinds of sleepwear. There were options ranging from cozy to stylish. "Is this what you really want?" I asked, my voice filled with frustration. "Do you want me to wear something just to please you?" "Victoria, I just want you to feel good," he replied. "You have lots of pajamas, even some with fun designs. You can choose whatever you like." He walked out for a few minutes. As I looked through the drawers, I found he was right. I discovered pajamas in various fun styles and colors. There were also plush sweatshirts and sweatpants that looked quite nice. The interesting part was that everything fit me perfectly. They were in colors I loved, too. Some items were in colors I might not have chosen myself. But when I thought about them or held them up to the mirror, I saw that they complemented my hair, eyes, and skin quite well. I had to admit that my captor had put some thought into things. A worry in my mind started to compare him to my husband. I looked in the mirror and didn't see anything that would attract a man. I realized I needed a shower before I tried on any of those nicer clothes. I walked over to a small door that felt tiny next to the big one that had kept me trapped. I didn't hear any buzzing, which made me think I could go through it. Just as I turned the handle, I heard a noise behind me and turned around to see that he had come back into the room. As he noticed my state of dress, he quickly turned and stepped back outside. "Sorry," he shouted. "I didn't think you'd be getting ready." I was puzzled. He had kidnapped me and wasn't going to let me return home to my husband and family, yet he left the room so quickly to avoid an embarrassing moment. On the other hand, he had already said that if I was going to be with someone, it would be with him. None of this made sense. If I were in his shoes, I might have acted differently. Maybe he was trying to treat me kindly first, as if he wanted me to feel cared for before anything else. That way, he could say he had been good to me if it ever came up later. "Hey!" I called out. He peeked around the wall, then quickly pulled back. "You have a few robes hanging in your bathroom," he called out. I looked and saw he was right. I put one on. "Okay, I'm covered," I shouted, and he came into the room. He was holding a bottle of wine and 2 glasses in one hand and a bottle of beer in the other. He stepped back out to grab a cart with soft drinks on it. "So what is happening here?" I asked him. He just looked at me with curiosity. "If you're going to harm me anyway, why are you acting so strangely?" He looked really upset and nodded. "I think I get what you mean," he said. "But you have it all wrong. You're not going to be harmed, not ever." "But you said we were going to be close," I pushed back. "I said I wanted us to," he repeated. "But it will always be your choice." I couldn't believe it. "So you mean you're okay with taking me away from my husband and my family without my say-so, but you won't force me?" "That does sound strange, doesn't it?" he confessed. "Then why didn't you want to see me like this?" I asked. "Victoria, I hope that one day you'll trust me, and maybe even like me a bit," he said, looking shy. "I can't earn your trust by invading your space. This is your room. It's your part of the house. You're in control here." Just then, the intercom beeped, and a voice announced that the pizza had arrived. He went to the intercom and asked them to bring it down. A few moments later, the woman I had seen before entered, carrying the pizza. She didn't seem surprised by anything in the room, which made me think that she had been there before. She didn't look at me directly. It felt like she was trying to ignore my presence, which made me wonder if she felt uneasy about the situation. She could be helpful for my escape plan. My captor, named Adam, and I had a conversation that was almost friendly. He told me all about the room and the things in it. I had a computer that I needed to learn to use. I could go online, but I could only send out a few things. I even had a credit card for shopping online. He looked a bit sad when he told me I could order anything I wanted, but I couldn't contact anyone by email, message, or text. He also told me about the 3 robes. One was made of silk, another was cotton, and the last was terry cloth. He didn't know which one I liked best. I was faced with the fact that I really didn't know what to do since I had never owned a robe before. I had a big 72-inch TV with cable, so I could watch anything I liked, anytime I wanted. If I felt hungry, I could just use the intercom and ask for food. I could also cook for myself. If I wanted to make something that didn't fit in my small kitchen, I could use the large kitchen in the main house. Once I adjusted to everything and demonstrated that I could be trusted, I was promised more freedom. This freedom would come gradually. If I behaved well, I could use the whole house and then the outdoor space as well. If I continued to prove myself trustworthy, I would eventually be allowed to leave the property and we could go on trips and vacations. "Like where?" I asked. "Anywhere you want to go," he answered. "So how can you be sure that I won't get overwhelmed and start yelling the moment I see the first person who will listen to me?" I questioned. "I could just keep playing nice until we were outside," he replied. "You are a very young and kind individual, Victoria," he said. "I know this is not a common way for people to meet, but I really want us to be good friends. I assume you want to live freely too, and I promise I don't want to spend my life in prison. I've taken steps to make sure that doesn't happen. One of those steps is your implant. I and some people I work with have small devices that control your implant. Whenever we go out or travel, one of us will always be with you. If you tried to do anything harmful, even if you made a small noise, we would have to act quickly to protect ourselves. The moment you tried to leave through that door was just a small taste of what we could do. You'd be in too much discomfort to tell anyone anything, and that discomfort, if not addressed, could lead to serious complications, he said, looking down. We've all made choices in the service of our country that we aren't proud of. We might not agree with them, but if it means protecting our freedom, we wouldn't think twice. So while I believe I could care for you, I would make the difficult decision without hesitation. Even if someone found a skilled doctor, they would need to know precisely where the issue lies and how to address it safely. The chance they would have the right resources available is very low. From the way he looked, I could tell he didn't want to discuss that anymore. After that, we chatted more casually about what I could do and what I couldn't. He mentioned that when he got home from work the next day, he would show me around the house and the yard. When I asked him what I should do during the day, he just smiled and said, "Do whatever you want." And he really meant it. The next morning when I woke up, I stretched my arms and looked around, feeling like I had just enjoyed a wonderfully restful sleep. I thought about finishing the leftover pizza, but then I noticed a note he had left on the table next to my cozy bed. The note wished me a great day and said that if I needed anything, I could just talk into the intercom and it would be taken care of. I enjoyed a long bath with refreshing bubbles. After that, I explored the closet and drawers to find something to wear. There were so many options that I found it difficult to choose. I turned on the TV to see what some presenters were wearing. I put together an outfit that closely resembled the styles I had seen. Then I took my hair out of its usual ponytail and tried to brush it. I searched through the drawers and discovered various types of makeup. I had never really worn much makeup before. I was experimenting with some products when I heard someone laugh behind me. I turned around and saw it was the woman I had met the night before. "You don't really know how to use that, do you?" She chuckled. I shot her an annoyed look. "And what are you getting all dressed up for? Is this like a game?" she asked. "Excuse me," I replied coolly. "I didn't study this sort of thing." "Listen, Victoria," she said, "we might as well try to make the best of this. He's a really nice guy, and trust me, he put in a lot of effort for this. So let's put aside the details and try to enjoy it." I still felt that she was concealing something from me. She showed me how to apply the eye makeup and everything else. Over the next few weeks, I learned that she had actually bought many of my clothes and set up my room. She took a step back, looked at my face, and nodded in approval. "You look nice," she said, "but we should fix your hair. As for your clothes, sweetie, he will probably show you around the house and yard. So you're not really going anywhere. I think you'd be more comfortable in some jeans or shorts. It's going to be really hot today, over 90 degrees. You'll have plenty of chances to dress up later." Even though I knew she was right, I loved the dress I had picked out so much that I stubbornly decided to keep it on. When Adam got home, I could tell right away. He came straight to me as soon as he walked in, knocking politely before entering. "This is your home, Adam," I said. "Not this part," he replied. "Well, please come in," I said. He walked over and looked at me, and his whole face lit up. It made me feel a bit strange. "What's wrong?" I asked. "You look so wonderful," he said. "I wish." He paused. "What do you wish for?" I asked. "I wish we could go out tonight and do something special that fits that dress. I would love to show you off," he said. I felt a strange flutter in my stomach at his compliment. I had been married to Zeke for more than 5 years, but I had never felt this way before. Adam reached out his hand and gently guided me through the big door to my room. He took me on a tour of the whole house, and I really liked it. The house was lovely, and there was so much space. We stepped outside to see the patio in the back and the pool. There was a little wooded area on one side, but the whole place was fenced in. That evening, and every night after, Adam and I spent a lot of time together. I truly believed that he spent more time with me in those early months than Zeke and I had during our whole marriage. We played games and watched movies together. Some nights we grilled steaks and looked at the stars before I went back to my room. He taught me how to swim. I never learned before because I grew up in a trailer park far from any water. The closest I had come to swimming was taking a bath. During all that time, he never made any advances toward me. I was really enjoying it. What was very strange was that he gave me updates. No one had said I was missing for the first month I was gone. I watched the news every day, but there was nothing about my disappearance on TV or in the newspapers. Finally, almost 3 months later, I saw a short story on the news. They had interviewed my brother about what happened to me. They only mentioned I was missing because my birthday was coming up, and some family members asked where I was and sent me cards. While they spoke to my brother Reb, who didn't seem very upset about me being gone, the camera showed the park. For just a moment, I saw Zeke. He tried to stay out of sight, but they caught him anyway. My husband, Zeke, was lying on the sofa on the porch with his feet up and a drink in his hand. He really didn't look very worried about me missing. My birthday was a big deal. Adam celebrated my birthday for a whole week. Every day, he brought me home another gift. On my actual birthday, he took me to a nice restaurant. I could see that he felt a little nervous about it, but he didn't need to worry. My desire to leave had faded away. I felt a bit sad and a bit angry at the same time. I was sad because the people who knew me and had been with me all my life didn't seem to care that I was gone. I was angry because my husband acted like my disappearance didn't matter. I always thought they would be searching hard for me, putting up posters or even having my picture on milk cartons. I thought I just needed to wait and then I could escape, thinking my family was out looking for me. But none of that was true. The person who took me away cared more about me than my own family. At the restaurant, I could see that Adam was nervous. "Adam, dear, just relax," I said. "I promise I won't do anything tonight. You can trust me." It turned out to be one of those nights that feel special, like in the movies. It was the most memorable evening I had ever experienced. After we got home from dinner, we enjoyed a glass of non-alcoholic beverage on the deck. Then we lay in the grass, looking at the stars. He pointed out different groups of stars to me, but I wasn't really focused on the stars. I was just listening to his voice. I remembered that he had always been kind to me. He never said anything mean, and he had never hurt me. Since I arrived, all he wanted was to make me happy. Suddenly, I turned to him and gave him a gentle gesture of appreciation. He stopped talking and smiled brightly. For a moment, I was surprised by the warmth of that interaction. I thought he might react differently, but he just smiled back at me. Feeling a bit embarrassed, I filled the quiet with words. "I just wanted to say thank you for everything you did for my birthday," I said. "It doesn't mean anything else." He nodded quietly, and I felt really bad. I was really unsure about everything. On one hand, this guy had treated me better than anyone else ever had, but on the other hand, I had to keep reminding myself that he had taken me without my choice and was making it impossible for me to go back to my family and my husband. I was also certain that my family was looking for me and would find me eventually. It felt strange. He stood there smiling at me, like my small gesture of appreciation meant so much. As the weeks went by, things got even stranger. We took walks in the neighborhood and I met some of the neighbors. They looked me over like they were curious about what made me special. Everyone seemed to really like Adam. Honestly, I liked Adam too. If he hadn't taken me away, I'd still be back in that old trailer getting drinks for Zeke. I think that was the moment when I stopped worrying and started enjoying life. Sometimes I still thought about leaving and checked to see how closely they were watching me. Other times, my guilt made me want to hide away in my room. Adam seemed to notice when I felt this way. He never got mad. He just let me have my space until I was ready to spend time with him again. When December came with snow and cold, I realized that Adam and I had been together for 6 months. There were no more news stories about me. It felt like everyone had forgotten me. I remembered how winter used to be at the trailer park and laughed. I often ended up spending time with Zeke more for warmth than because I really wanted to. But with Adam, we played in the snow like we were kids, then hurried inside for cups of tasty raspberry cocoa. We relaxed in front of the fire, either inside by the fireplace or outside by the fire pit on the deck. We played video games or watched movies together on my big TV. Adam always let me choose the movies we saw. He just sat there with a goofy smile, watching me from the side when he thought I didn't see him. As Adam and I became closer over the past few weeks, Tella, the woman who looked after me, became more serious. She was never mean to me, but I could tell she didn't like that they took me away. At first I thought she was just on my side, but later I understood she was worried about Adam, not me. A few weeks before Christmas, I was talking to her and mentioned how Adam often stared at me. She completely lost her temper. It was the first time I saw her get upset. "It's strange how he sits there and watches anything I want to see," I said. "We even watched Steel Magnolias last night." My brother always said no man could sit through that movie without getting bored. But Adam just sat there smiling. Most of the time, he didn't even look at the screen. He was only watching me. I wondered why he did that. "Ugh, what a fool!" she suddenly shouted. "He does it because he really likes you. For some reason, he thinks you're really special. Do you even know how lucky you are? I wish I could just take you back to that old trailer park." "I wish you could too," I replied. "I'd leave right now. Let's go." She just walked out of the room, and I didn't see her for the rest of the day. The next day, she said she was sorry. I finally understood what was happening. Tella liked him. The trouble was, I wasn't sure if I liked him too. That evening, while Adam and I watched Game of Thrones, I glanced at him from the side. I kept catching him looking at me. I decided to wait until he did it again, and then I looked right back at him. I could see it shining in his eyes like a happy puppy. He really had feelings for me. It made me feel odd. Then suddenly I found myself leaning closer to him. It felt electric, and I could sense the connection between us. He seemed pleasantly surprised, and our moment lingered, drawing us closer together. Time felt like it faded away, and I enjoyed being in that space with him. Adam had a unique presence that made everything feel exciting. I liked that he didn't taste like old drinks or anything unpleasant. Another thing I liked was how gently he pulled me closer. It felt like he was just happy to be with me and not trying to take control. I hadn't been close to anyone in 6 months, so I quickly felt a rush of feelings. I leaned against him and playfully rested my leg over his waist. Suddenly, he gently pushed me away, leaving me surprised. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Tori, you've had quite a bit of wine and you seem really excited," he said. "This is a big step." "Maybe you should think about it first," he said. I felt a pang of hurt and spoke without really planning my words. "Are you sure you want to let this go?" I asked. "I might not ask again." He just stared at me. I stood up and walked over to the big door as if to show him out. He got up and followed me. "Good night, Tori," he said, sounding sad. Once he left, I jumped onto my bed and cried. Later that night, I kept thinking about it and felt terrible. I realized how foolish I had been. Adam had cared more about my feelings than I did. I had been a bit tipsy and flustered, even though I didn't usually think of myself that way. A part of me was upset that he didn't immediately want to take things further, but he was more worried about how I would feel about it afterwards. That was the moment I truly understood what love meant, and that Adam loved me. I realized my own husband treated me more like a toy than a partner. Zeke just wanted to drink and have some fun, but Adam really cared about how I felt. It was confusing to think about. I woke up the next morning with a headache and felt even worse. Tella brought me breakfast and looked at me with disappointment. Adam, I couldn't believe I had messed up with Victoria. It took me months to get us comfortable with each other. The affection from last night made me think we were getting closer, and it felt like we were moving in the right direction. I had started to believe that no matter how we met, we could be a real couple. As I drove my Mustang to work, the car roared and rumbled. Its strong engine made the drive quick and smooth. I tried to focus on my work that day, not wanting to think about how I had ruined things the night before. For the first time, Victoria had actually asked me to leave her room. All I could do was hope that one day she would understand what really happened and why I acted the way I did. I wasn't pushing her away. I just wanted her to know the truth. Maybe I should have explained about Julie. If she knew what happened between us, she might understand why I had to be careful. My heart was still healing. I didn't know if it could take another heartbreak. Victoria was a confusing part of my life. I had gathered a strong group of friends from the military, most of whom I had served with. Some of them, especially Tella, thought that being with Victoria was too risky. Tella even said she would look out for Victoria in a very firm way and leave her at the corner store. I didn't understand why Tella felt so strongly that Victoria needed to go. She had always been very protective. The problem was that I already loved Victoria, and I couldn't turn back now. I loved her much more than I ever loved Julie, my first wife. Until last night, everything seemed really perfect between Victoria and me. I didn't expect everything to be flawless. I knew we would encounter some challenges along the way, but I never thought it would hurt like this. This was a whole new area for me. In business, we studied our competition very closely. We looked for their weaknesses and found ways to overcome them. Sometimes we took over their companies or worked with them. I have to admit, we could be tough, but that was just business. I wish love could work like that. I struggle with feelings and emotions. If it were my choice, I would have already married Victoria. I would have told her from the first moment I saw her that I had loved her right away. My mind reminded me every day of how much Julie had hurt me, so I had to be cautious. I told myself from the start that I wouldn't share my feelings with her until she showed me hers. Last night was tough, but I could handle it. I would give her some space for a few days and wait for her to reach out. Every day, I received updates about the people we were watching. I was surprised to find out that Victoria's husband had already moved on with another woman. Just a day after Victoria went missing, he had brought her to stay in his trailer. What made it even stranger was that this woman was Victoria's own sister. And to make matters worse, Zeke had apparently gotten her pregnant. Still, it seemed like everyone in the family was okay with it. It felt almost as if no one was really looking for Victoria. It felt as if Zeke had asked for another sister to take her place, and that's exactly what he got. The police had talked to Zeke. He admitted that he had been a bit rough with her that morning before she went out. They thought she had just left him. They wanted to charge him with domestic violence, but they couldn't do anything without a complaint from her. On the other hand, they couldn't charge her for taking the $20 he gave her without proof he had given her the money. Since she was gone, there was no one to charge. After visiting the trailer, they figured she was likely better off wherever she was. So, it was clear why the police weren't working hard on the case like they normally would. Zeke, I stretched my neck to see around Tammy. She was always so close to me, never more than 2 feet away. "Tammy, can you move a bit? I want to watch the TV," I said. She smiled and moved closer, so I could keep watching the end of the race. Every time I was with Victoria, it felt like I had to convince her to be close to me unless she wanted something first. When the bill came and she expressed interest in some expensive item, she'd agree to be with me. But even then, she'd just lay there with her eyes closed. Sometimes I thought she was asleep while we were together and woke up when it was over. That really hurt my pride. I also found out that she had been deceiving me. After she left, taking my money, Tammy found some of Victoria's things and put her own clothes in that drawer. While cleaning, Tammy discovered Victoria's birth control pills. For all the years we were married, I thought I couldn't have children because I was getting older. But Victoria had been on birth control this whole time. It felt like she didn't want to have kids with me. It was as if she thought I was good enough to help her leave her parents' house, but not good enough to be a father. My biggest concern now, and Tammy's too, was that someday Victoria would return. And Victoria was too proud to sleep on the couch. Even her name sounded fancy. She only accepted being called Victoria. If anyone tried calling her Vicky or Vic, she would just ignore them. It made me wonder how a woman could grow up in a trailer park and act so high and mighty. How could two sisters be so different? The only thing Tammy cared about was being close to me. She had already expressed that once we had our first child, she wanted to have another one. I wasn't sure if she just liked kids or if she enjoyed being by my side. But I was not looking forward to Victoria showing up again. I figured she would eventually do it just to annoy me, but I really didn't want that to happen. After her angry outburst, I knew I couldn't talk to Tella. In fact, I felt like there was no one I could share my feelings with about what happened the night before. When I thought about it, I understood that I had one more reason to leave this place. I was sure my family was worried sick by now, and I even started to question my own feelings. I thought I might be experiencing something akin to Stockholm Syndrome. Stockholm Syndrome is when someone who is taken against their will starts to feel sympathy for those causing their distress. People who are mistreated can begin to think that they deserve that treatment. They might also start to believe in the perspectives their captors endorse. In my case, I had started to think that what Adam was doing to me was not so bad. The worst part was that I was even starting to have feelings for him. I was actually contemplating being unfaithful to my husband for a man who had taken me away and wouldn't let me go back to my family. I was struggling inside, unsure if I should try to find a way out. The hardest part was remembering the look in his eyes when he pushed me away. I could see it was really tough for him. I felt that he wanted to be close to me just as much as I wanted to be close to him. But there was something more important to him than that. The thought of it made me very anxious. I started to believe that Adam genuinely cared for me. Not in the same way my husband did, but rather with the kind of deep affection that you see in movies, the kind that makes someone want to stay with you forever. Then there was how I thought about my relationship with Zeke. It was like what my grandmother always said, it was something a woman typically did for her husband. "Just close your eyes and wait until it's done," she told me. The first time it feels really intense, but after that it's just not pleasant. She was right about that. Maybe it was because my feelings were growing stronger and it had been some time since I had shared that kind of intimacy with someone. I had also had a little to drink, which probably didn't help. But I found myself wanting to be closer to Adam. I couldn't figure out why I was willing to be involved with a man who was holding me against my will, something I didn't even want to do with my own husband unless there was something in it for me. After thinking for a few more hours, I remembered my plan to escape. I aimed to make them trust me. Then, when they let their guard down, I could slip away. Last night would have been the perfect moment to move forward with my plan. Like a spy, I could have made my move by letting Adam get close. If he was anything like Zeke, he would have fallen asleep right after, giving me a chance to quietly leave the house while everyone was asleep. I needed a way to turn off the doors linked to my implant. I figured that the remotes they used worked like car key fobs. If I stayed far enough away from them, I could stay safe. So I spent the rest of the day getting ready for Adam. I knew about when he would be home, and soon enough, I heard the sound of his Mustang coming up the road. I made myself comfortable on the sofa in my room, waiting for him. It made me feel good to see how happy he was every time he saw me. I sat there for a while, hoping he would walk in, but he didn't. After some time, I turned on the TV and watched an episode of Big Bang Theory. He still hadn't arrived. I remembered that a few times Adam had come home with work or friends and needed to take care of that before he could see me. Usually, he'd call me on the intercom to let me know what was happening. I decided to use the intercom myself. I talked to Tella. She informed me that Adam was definitely home, but didn't say much more. She asked if I wanted dinner, and I said yes. The cook had made one of my favorite meals. When Tella brought mine to me, I asked her if Adam would be having dinner with me, as we always did. I was surprised when she told me he had already eaten. I really couldn't understand what was going on. By that time, I could move around the house and the grounds a little. If I got too close to the gates, I would feel a warning buzz. There were days when I felt like a dog in a yard with one of those invisible fences. I went to Adam's room and saw that the TV was on. He was lying on his bed, watching one of our shows without me. I looked around the corner at him. He didn't seem happy for some reason. He didn't have his usual glow. I felt sad, too. I went back to my room and asked Tella to come see me. "What is it?" she asked when she arrived. "Why is Adam sad?" I inquired. She rolled her eyes and shook her head. "Tella, I don't need your attitude," I said, raising my voice. She just stared at me. "I know you care about him," I added. "The best thing you can do right now is to focus on helping me, so tell me why he is sad." "Because he cares about someone who isn't good for him at all," she said sharply. "And that same person rejected him, leaving him feeling lost." "I'm really sorry," I replied. "I didn't know. No one has ever cared about me like that before. I was unsure of what to say." "Victoria, you wouldn't see him at his best right now," she said. "He is really the kindest and nicest guy I've ever known, but he's feeling really confused inside. I probably shouldn't tell you this." She sat beside me on the edge of my bed, then she took out her remote and pressed a button. The big door closed tightly, leaving just the two of us. "You know that many of us served in the army together, right?" she asked. I nodded. "Adam was our leader. We all relied on each other and never left anyone behind, no matter what. We came from different places and had different lives, but when we were together, we worked as a team. We all had our reasons to stay alive and make it out of that tough place in one piece. For Adam, it was Julie. She was the love of his life. They had just gotten married a few days before he had to leave for deployment. The two of them decided to wait until after they were married to share their lives more intimately, which seems a bit old-fashioned now, but that's what they chose." I nodded in agreement. "I also waited until I married Zeke," I said. "My sisters were dating everyone around, but I never felt in a hurry. Even after almost 5 years with Zeke, I still don't see what the big deal is." "Anyway," she continued, We spent 18 months away from home, and when we returned, life went back to normal. Julie was living in the house where Adam grew up. His dad had passed away while Adam was away. He got to go home for the funeral, but that was the only time Adam had been home during those 18 months. He must have been really glad to see her, I said. Not really, said Tella. Julie was 5 months pregnant. Adam was heartbroken. It ruined his trust in everything. He went through a lot to end things with her. At first, she tried to make him believe that she was just feeling lonely. So, he hired some private investigators to find out what really happened. It turned out that Julie had gone out with some friends, got very drunk, and ended up in an uncomfortable situation with someone she didn't even know. One of her friends told the investigators what happened. She even said that Julie had cried for weeks about hurting Adam and how unhappy the experience was. But after some time, it seemed she thought any attention was better than none. So she started going out to bars, foolishly thinking Adam would never find out. Eventually, some of her friends stopped going out with her because they were embarrassed to be with her. They felt she had changed so much. Many people in town looked down on her because Adam was out there serving our country while his wife was back home acting inappropriately. The hardest part was that Adam didn't have to go. He was the only child in his family. His dad owned a business, which meant he could have found a way to keep Adam safe at home. But Adam didn't want any special treatment. Adam cared for her deeply, so when she tried to convince him that the baby was his, he wanted to believe her. He even started going to doctor appointments with her, but one day they came across one of Julie's other friends. He didn't think they were together. To be fair, Julie hadn't told many of those guys that she was married, so he walked up to her and put his arm around her, saying he'd visit that evening. Adam confronted the man right then. When the man realized who Adam was, he shared everything that had happened. That was when Julie shared her "I was lonely" story, and Adam decided to hire private investigators to find the truth. Once he talked to her about what was really going on and got the doctor to prove he wasn't the father, he started the divorce process. Julie tried hard to win him back. She even attempted to stop the divorce. Adam felt hurt and upset. He hired the best lawyers he could find because there was a lot of evidence against Julie, and many people in town had seen her actions and didn't approve. Strangely, even some of the men who had been around her came forward to help Adam. Most of them were just regular guys who, when approached, had gone along without asking questions. Most of them felt really bad when they learned she was married to a man serving overseas and that she had been dishonest about what happened. The most challenging moment for Julie came when her doctor informed her that Adam could not be the father of her baby, though she had been trying to make him believe he was. This was dishonest, and the judge, understanding the situation, granted Adam a divorce. Instead of Julie facing legal repercussions for her deceit, she agreed to leave Adam alone, and he didn't have to provide her with any support or money. Many felt relief over this outcome. However, Adam became increasingly withdrawn and despondent. He stopped going on dates and found it hard to trust anyone, particularly women. Until recently, most of the secretaries and office workers at Adam's company were men, as he was reluctant to hire women at all. Julie's actions not only hurt him emotionally, but also impacted his overall spirit. "Well, why did he hire you?" I asked. "That's part of my problem," she replied. "Adam sees me as one of his team. I'm like a soldier to him, and I also feel like family. I care about him deeply and would never betray him, but he just doesn't see me as a woman. It feels unfair. So we considered that perhaps some social interactions with other women might help Adam feel better. We tried to explain this to him. There would be no emotional commitments involved. He could simply enjoy the company and then part ways when he was finished. If he liked the woman, he could see her again, and if not, he could choose someone else. We went to a reputable place in Reno, but it didn't work out. Adam isn't the type to engage in casual encounters. He needs some emotional connection, as it matters to him beyond just companionship. Honestly, neither of you have shared a close bond in months, and since you arrived, he seems genuinely happier. You mentioned feeling curious about why he smiles whenever he sees you. He feels a sense of comfort just being around you, which is why I'm pleased you both are exploring this connection. He's becoming more attached to you. Sooner or later, circumstances might change and you could leave. We have contingency plans for that. We know we'll need to start fresh elsewhere. Because if you leave, you might go to the authorities, but I believe they won't track us down. Like I said, it's a risky situation, but many of us genuinely care about Adam. We would do anything for him. So if you bring him happiness, that's wonderful. I just hate seeing him sad when it feels like his feelings are at stake. He deserves better. And yes, Victoria, I understand that what we did was wrong. None of us, especially him, ever aimed to cause you harm. All he wants is to see you happy. I view this as the beginning of something significant. He truly cares for you, very deeply. If both of you remain unhappy for a while, I think he might offer you a decision. What kind of decision? I asked. Adam is a fair person, she said. I believe that when he feels stronger emotionally, and I'm not certain how long that will take, he might let you go and provide some assistance so you won't take action against him. How long will that be? I asked. I'm not sure, she replied, but this is largely up to you. I'm sure you're glad he isn't in your room watching you, right? As she walked away and left the door open, I switched off the lights and the TV in my room. It was already past 10 o'clock, and I thought about everything we had talked about. For the first time, I realized something surprising. I wasn't happy either. I had dressed up, hoping he would come to me, but he did exactly what I had told him to do. I made it clear that he wasn't welcome in my room, and he hadn't come back. It was strange because when he didn't come back, I went looking for him. His sadness affected me, and it wasn't just a strange feeling. I had to admit that I missed him. I snuggled under the covers and tried to sleep. It took me a long time to finally doze off. The next morning, I got up as usual and headed to his room. He was already at work, which was normal for him. I decided to dress a bit nicer and wore clothes that he liked. Adam preferred more modest outfits, but he often commented about how much he liked my style. So I chose a blouse that was comfortable and a pair of stylish shorts. I went outside to the deck and sat on the edge of the pool, letting my legs splash in the cool water. He walked into the kitchen and spotted me. I had been glancing at the kitchen and noticed when he entered. Our eyes met, and he looked even more downcast. It felt like being apart was really affecting him. My heart ached even more. I wished he would act like Zeke and just come over, encourage me, and tell me to get my act together. In my marriage, even when Zeke was wrong, he somehow always felt right. He was the man, so his word meant everything. I realized I had been very wrong. Adam had tried to keep me safe from my own mistakes. He didn't want to take advantage of me when I was inebriated, and now he was the one feeling the pain. The strange thing was, I felt hurt too. I missed being with him, his laughter, and the kind way he treated me. If that was an odd feeling for me, then so be it. He left the kitchen, and I knew I couldn't handle another night like the one before. I walked back to my room through the dark house. I took a relaxing bath with my favorite bubble bath, enjoying a long soak. When I finished, I put on my soft robe from the back of the door and left my room. I climbed the stairs and went to Adam's room. I didn't knock. I just turned the handle and walked in. He was lying on his bed, watching TV. "Victoria, you're not supposed to just walk into someone's room," he said. I started to think about my grandmother's views on relationships for the first time. I felt nervous and unsure about what would happen next. I felt guilty because I realized that we were going to be together in a way that felt wrong, especially because I was married. I had often worried that Zeke, my husband, might be unfaithful, but I figured that was just what many men did. Still, I had never been with anyone else. It was mostly because I had never felt a strong desire for connection. But at that moment, it was different. I felt a real longing for closeness. When his attention moved closer, I found myself encouraging him to engage more with me, and he responded to that. Being close to my husband had never felt this thrilling, even though we hadn't crossed certain boundaries yet. His playful gestures surprised me. Adam moved in closer, and I felt a surge of awareness. Most of my life, I had been pretty reserved in such situations. Zeke used to say I didn't express much. Not that he ever initiated much beyond that. Even after years of marriage, he never wanted to delve deeper into our relationship. He said that it felt inappropriate. My whole being felt alive as Adam continued to engage with me gently. I noticed that I felt different. I was more attuned to myself, almost radiant. Adam gently encouraged a sense of openness within me. The sensation was overwhelming. Then he began to enjoy my presence like someone savoring their favorite comfort. "I'm here for you, Adam," I said softly. He moved closer, and it felt unlike anything I had experienced before. With Zeke, it always seemed forced and uncomfortable. I just let him take the lead, following what I thought I should do. This time was different. It felt like we were meant to be together in a way that felt natural and right. I was so at ease that there was no discomfort at all. It was just amazing. When he began to move with me, I didn't try to control it. My senses seemed to respond on their own, and I leaned in closer. I really wanted to connect with him more. My mind was a bit clouded, but everything felt in harmony, like we were created for this moment. It was as if everything within me opened up, welcoming him completely. I felt a strange sensation inside me, something I had never experienced before. It was overwhelming, like I was losing my balance and about to fall. A moment later, I felt something warm and strong, and it made me shiver with surprise. Adam tried to step back, but I wanted him to stay close. I held on to him tightly, as if I could not bear for him to pull away. I love you, Tori, he said. I couldn't believe my ears. I was so surprised that I didn't know how to respond. I knew I should have said that I loved him too, but I was too stunned to speak. Hearing him say those words felt much more serious than when Tella said it. It seemed like Adam had given me something very precious that I wasn't sure I deserved. Then I tried to lighten the mood with a joke, but I realized that I really wanted to share my true feelings with him. I looked into his eyes, hoping to express everything that was in my heart, but a mix of guilt about what I had just said and my bad sense of humor ruined that nice moment. I thought you said you'd never hurt me, I joked lightly. The look on his face showed pure shock. The eyes I had grown to love widened in surprise. He gasped sharply, and I realized I had hurt him. He covered his stomach and hurried to the bathroom, where I could hear him struggling to catch his breath. I was just as shocked as he was. While he took my bad joke seriously, I suddenly remembered something important that I had forgotten. That afternoon, Tella had told me how sensitive he was in emotional situations. The poor man had already had his heart broken badly by a woman before. Then he reached out to me. Yes, he had a really strange way of doing it, but I didn't care about that at that moment. After what we had just gone through, I didn't care about the little things. I felt like we had connected in a deep way. He had made me feel so loved and alive in those few minutes more than I had ever felt before. He had to understand that. He had to know that I was only joking, right? I was the one who went to his room looking for him. I walked in and closed the door. I climbed onto the bed and told him I wasn't drunk. I expressed my feelings and asked him to be close to me, but he hesitated, trying to determine my sincerity. Adam, I called out. He didn't answer, and then I heard it, a sound that made my heart drop. I knew instantly that Adam had found his way to his car, and he was leaving. I had no clue how he managed to get out of the bathroom, let alone the house. I was nearly out of control. I jumped off the bed and ran down the stairs. Damon and Tella were in the main hallway trying to understand what was happening. Adam obviously hadn't had time to explain anything to them. I wanted to rush past them and outside. Damon tried to stop me, but I was set on my path. I ducked past him and headed straight for Tella, who didn't even try to stop me. Just as I reached the door, I heard Damon shout, "No!" I felt a strange buzzing sensation, but it had been so long since Adam had shown me what it meant that I had forgotten about it. I was allowed to roam everywhere on the grounds, but going outside felt like a big mistake. As I stepped out the door, a sharp pain shot through my body. It hurt so much that I couldn't hold on, and I fainted almost right away. The first time I felt that pain, I had been walking, allowing myself to slow down and step back. I was running as fast as I could when the pain hit me, leading to a sudden fall. Just then, I felt Damon's strong arms grasp me and pull me away from the door until the pain subsided. Through a fog, I heard him speaking to Tella in an urgent tone. "You could have at least tried to stop her. It's our job to keep her safe," he said firmly. "Forget that," she replied sharply. "If she hurt him or caused trouble again, they might never find her. Lock her up in her room while I call Adam. Until he tells us otherwise, she's not going out of her room anymore." When I woke up later, it was past midnight. Tella was sitting in a chair by my bed watching TV. "My head hurts," I said, looking at her. "Where's Adam?" "What did you think would happen?" she asked with a sarcastic tone. "You could have at least tried to warn me," I shot back. I had no idea it would end up like this, she said. His car is really fast. Did you plan to show off and hope they'd take it easy? I just stared at her. Where is he? I don't know, she replied. I have no clue why he left, but I think you do, so tell me. It's personal, I said. She tilted her head and looked at me, making me uneasy. I can't hurt Damon. He's family, she said firmly. I realized that Damon being there was likely why I was safe. Look, we both want him to be okay, she continued calmly. Actually, we both want the same thing. We both want you to leave. Let's work together on this for now, and maybe we can find a way to get you home later. I didn't have the heart to tell her that I wasn't sure I wanted to leave anymore. I stumbled over my words. You were together, she finished for me. Just say it. It's not a secret. Everyone in the neighborhood probably knows. I could see a hint of jealousy in her expression, despite her sarcastic words. Anyway, I said, it wasn't just that. We shared something really special. It felt beautiful. I've never experienced anything like that before. Aren't you married? She asked. Doesn't your husband? She paused abruptly, as if reconsidering her words. But it's never been like that, I replied. I promise, it was the best time I've ever had. Not just a great moment, it was the best experience of my life. Then he expressed his feelings. Her eyes narrowed and her demeanor turned serious. Tella, it was such an unusual moment. I didn't know how to respond, so I made a joke and... She stared at me as if trying to make sense of my words. He opened his heart to you and you made a joke about it? She asked, overlooking my feelings. This made me feel even worse. It must have been quite a joke, she said, shaking her head. Tell me what you said. I told her my words, and she nearly lost her balance. You're really not thinking clearly, she said sharply. Making light of important issues is not okay. It's one of the worst things that can happen to anyone. Also, it's very serious to accuse someone of that. Plus, Adam feels a lot of guilt about you. What does he have to feel guilty for? I asked. Are you forgetting that we took you away? She asked. He's been thinking a lot about letting you go, so just keep counting those days and soon you'll be back with him, Zeke. $1,000, I said again. The woman in front of me nodded and glanced at her clipboard. Really, it's $500 for you and $500 for Tammy, but if you want to combine your money, that makes it $1,000. And all we have to do is share how we feel about our loss? I asked. Yes, that's right, she replied. Can we do it now? I asked. She waved to a cameraman and he began to set up the equipment. I walked over to Tammy. Hey, I need you to do something for me, I said. I need you to talk to that camera and express how much you miss your sister. I don't miss her at all, Tammy snapped. Is that what you want me to say? No, that's not right. I need you to get emotional and talk about how sad you are that she's gone. Think of it like we're acting in a scene for a movie, I told her. Just watch me. The man set the camera in front of me and I began to speak. The woman asked if I missed Victoria. Only every day, I replied sadly. Victoria was the joy in my life. Without her, everything feels dark and lonely. I can only remember the last thing I told her before she went to get some drinks. I told her I loved her and... I started to tear up, then looked back at the camera. Victoria, if you're out there, please come home. I cried more, hoping the audience would connect with my feelings. They always seemed to appreciate when men showed their softer side. Let's see you top that, I whispered to Tammy. Tammy was impressive. She really knew how to act. I'd say she was the star of our family. I just want my sister back, she said, looking directly at the camera. So much has changed since she left us almost 9 months ago. She waved for the camera to follow her as she walked up onto the porch. She picked up the baby and held her up to the camera. Victoria, this is your niece. She was born while you were away. We named her after you. I felt really emotional when Tammy used my idea, so I started to tear up, and the baby began to cry too. Quickly, I jumped back in front of the camera and cried along with them. As soon as the director yelled, "Cut!" we all stopped crying. Tammy walked away and put the baby back in the crib. I held out my hand and the woman gave me 10 fresh $100 bills. I walked over to Tammy while they packed up to leave. You tricking friend, I said, laughing. You know we named the baby Tammy after you. Yeah, but we spell her name with an I, she replied. I took $100 from the stack and handed it to her. They gave us $200 for acting, I said. You get half. Her face lit up and she quickly grabbed the money and tucked it away. You better find a safer place to keep that, I said. That's the first place I would look. I shared a warm moment with her. Just then, a bill floated down and I quickly grabbed it while she closed her eyes and smiled, enjoying the moment. 2 hours later, she came into the trailer, upset and telling me that I had been right. She had lost her money. Don't worry, Tammy, I said. Money comes and goes, but I'll share mine with you. I held out a $100 bill and told her to spend $50, but to please bring back my change. Getting some sleep really helped me when I finally managed to doze off. I had a series of dreams that helped me see things more clearly. I dreamt about what had happened in Adam's room the night before. It wasn't just that we had shared a close moment. It was the way he had treated me during my time there. Even how his friends had taken care of me showed me a lot. They had helped me feel relaxed, and they hadn't left a single mark on me. I woke up feeling fuzzy but safe. While I was unconscious, they had put a tiny RF chip on me. But I figured that was much better than being harmed or mistreated. When I thought about Adam, all I felt was warmth. He had never raised a hand to me or even shouted at me. I also thought about Zeke and how different my life could have been if I had stayed home. I didn't understand why, at 23, I felt bad about leaving a man who was 40 and had married a girl who was only 18, treating her poorly. Tella was right. Zeke made me do things I didn't want to do, no matter how I felt. If I disagreed with him, there were consequences, and we rarely left our trailer. I had married Zeke to escape my parents, but all I found was a different kind of trapping. I moved just a few trailers away and ended up feeling just as confined. Why would I ever want to go back to that place? My last dream this morning was a strange one. I dreamed that the police came to the house and saved me. They took me back to Zeke. I watched as years went by. I became overwhelmed, looking just like the other older women in the trailer park. I had 6 kids, and we all still lived in that trailer. My whole life, I never went more than a mile from that trailer, and Zeke and I argued all the time. It was a nightmare. Adam was caught during the raid and faced consequences for taking me. I tried to tell them I had been treated well and didn't want to press charges. But Zeke told them I had been brainwashed, claiming it was his job to make decisions for me as my husband. He wanted Adam to face the worst punishment. In my dream, he even called it the Lectric chair. We even named one of our kids Lectric. When I woke up the next morning, I knew what I had to do. I took a shower, got dressed, and calmly walked over to the intercom. I talked to Tella and asked for Damon. She was upset but got him on the line. I requested him to come to my room right away. When he arrived, Tella came along with him. "You look lovely this morning, Victoria," he said. "What do you need help with?" "The real question is, what can you do for yourself?" I replied. They both gave me confused looks. "In 10 minutes, I'm going to leave this house and search for Adam. You both know how my guilt made me miss one of the best moments of my life last night. Today, I want to make things right. I'm determined to leave this house and find Adam. I know my implant might cause me a lot of pain, so I might not even make it out of this room. If I do get past that, the front door might be challenging, like it was last night. I know there are other obstacles ahead, too. I also don't have a car, and I have no idea where he is, but I won't stop until I find him. Even if I have to ask everyone I see on the street until I find him." Damon took a deep breath, and Tella smiled slightly. "Tella, I know you don't really care what happens to me, but it's your job to keep me safe. If something happens to me, you won't have a job anymore." "Victoria, wait," Damon said. "Let me call him." "I already told you that you have 10 minutes, I replied. Damon took out his phone and began talking. He wasn't speaking to Adam directly, so he had to wait until he got through. "Why don't you have your phone, Adam?" he finally asked. He looked at me to let me know he had him on the line. I heard Damon telling Adam about my plan. After a little while, he glanced back at me. "He said he'll be home tonight, so you two can talk then. He also said he's sorry and is trying to sell the company quickly. He has a few buyers interested, and you might be home by tomorrow night. If he can make it happen, it will be sooner than that." "So, he's working?" I asked. Damon nodded. "Good. Take me there," I said. "But he said—" Damon started. "Damon, things are different now," I said. "I'm the one in charge. I guess I always was. I just didn't see it before. I won't try to run away. You can even put restraints on me if you want. But you're taking me to see Adam. "But he's at work," said Damon. "All right, I'm going," I said. I stood up and walked toward the door. Tella stepped in front of me. "You're going to get hurt," she said sharply. "And it will be your fault," I replied. "Does Adam know that I almost got myself in trouble last night trying to catch him? Or that you didn't even try to stop me?" She turned pale for a moment and then took out her remote while I kept moving. When I got upstairs, she pressed another button and I stepped onto the porch for the very first time. "You know I can still stop you, right?" she warned. I nodded. "Please take me to see Adam," I said. "I already told you I'm not going anywhere." We drove into town, passing through streets I had never seen before. It amazed me that I had lived in this city all my life and had never visited downtown. Our city had a center with neighborhoods spreading out from it. We lived in one of the nicer neighborhoods. The trailer park where I grew up was in a poorer part. It was surprising to realize I had only been about a 20-minute drive from Zeke's trailer all this time. We arrived at a shiny building made of steel and glass with a parking lot that had a guard. The guard checked the badge of a car leaving, then waved us through. I waved back, even though I didn't know him. We got out of the car and entered through a back door, where another guard was standing. He tensed up when he saw Damon and Tella. I thought he might salute them. I waved at him again. He smiled at me. We walked around the edge of a large factory where many people were working on different machines. Tella made sure I did not step over the lines painted on the floor. "Inside those lines, you need to wear safety glasses," she explained. We took an elevator to the 3rd floor. This floor only had offices and meeting rooms. We entered a room where an older woman who looked very serious was sitting at her desk. "He's busy, Tella," she said. I just smiled at her and walked past before she could stop me. I turned the doorknob and opened it. The woman reached out to grab me, but I was already inside. With surprising strength, she pulled me back, but it was too late. "Adam!" I shouted. He quickly looked up and told the woman to let me go. Compared to her, Tella seemed much smaller. This woman, even with her nice suit and serious attitude, was clearly another former soldier. But she had a tough edge, like a guard dog. She glared at me, and it felt like she wanted to intimidate me. It took her some time to calm down. As she stood there adjusting her suit, I smiled back at her. I stepped closer and offered my hand. "No hard feelings," I said. "I get it. You're just doing your job. I hope you can see that I'm really in a tough spot. If you were in my place, I'm sure you would have done the same. I'm Victoria, by the way." She shook my hand, but from the look on her face, I could tell she recognized me. I closed the door behind me and walked slowly across the room. Adam was sitting at a huge desk that looked as big as a bed. "Victoria, he started. "What are you saying sorry for, Adam?" I asked. I started walking around the desk because I really wanted to make contact with him. He stepped back from me. I laughed a little at that. Everything in the office was meant to denote strength, indicating that the man behind the desk was in charge. Yet here he was, stepping away from someone like me who came from a simple background. I let him move back and followed him closely until he reached the wall, leaving him with nowhere to go. He started to say, "You have feelings for me, Adam," I said. "No, I don't," he replied quietly, looking down. "I didn't bring you here by choice." "You might as well admit it. It shows on your face," I said. "Adam, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said what I did. But I've never felt like this before. I was scared and felt guilty about my feelings for you. You need to understand where I come from." The few times I went to that small church in the trailer park, I had seen a picture of Tammy Wynette next to Jesus. I was raised to always stand by my man. I guess last night I was trying to stand by the wrong one. Could I start over? "Huh?" he replied. "I want you to say what you said last night again, and then I can say what I wanted to say," I told him. He looked at me, curious. "Victoria," he began, but I gently covered his mouth. "Wait, we have to do this right," I insisted. "Please sit down at your big desk and let me come in like it's a fresh start." He stared at me, confused, as I dashed to the door and opened it wide. Outside, Damon, Tella, and the other woman were all looking at me. I counted to 3 with them watching, then walked back inside. Adam smiled at me as I approached his desk. I walked around and sat down beside him. "Victoria, I love you," he said. Something within me shifted at that moment. A rush of excitement surged through me when he said it. It was confusing because we had just been close the night before, yet I still wanted him. Maybe this was how some of the women in the park, including my sister, felt. He made me feel a kind of wildness I didn't fully understand. "I love you too, Adam," I said. I wrapped my arms around his neck and hugged him tightly. I could feel the warmth between us. Suddenly, I heard a noise from behind us. At first, I didn't pay much attention. "Hey!" Tella called out sharply. "You do realize the door is open and people can see you? Adam, Nate Johnson is on the phone." "Tell him we're not ready to sell yet," he replied. She rolled her eyes and left the office. "We can talk more when you get home," I said with a smile. I stepped back from him and stood by his desk. "This is to remind you of what's waiting for you at home. Don't be late," I said playfully. "Come on, Damon," I said. "Let's go home. I'm really hungry." That evening, Adam surprisingly got home early. I had spent most of the afternoon in the kitchen preparing all his favorite meals. Even though we had a cook, I wanted to cook for him myself. He enjoyed everything I made, including my blueberry pie. After dinner, we headed to his room and settled in for the night. I felt a bit silly because, while being close was nice, the comfort of being together was even better. I woke up from my restful sleep around 1 a.m. I felt happier than I ever had before. It suddenly dawned on me that I was not in my own bed. I was in Adam's bed, and he was next to me, holding me close. I felt warm and safe, and I wished I could stay there forever. I cuddled up to him and drifted back to sleep. When I woke up the next morning, I remembered him gently getting out of bed and saying goodbye before he left. I took a shower and then asked Damon and a few friends for help. "What do you want us to do?" they asked. "I need all my clothes moved into this closet, and then I'll show you what else I need help with," I said. "That's not happening," Tella said with a smirk. "Call him," I suggested. "I bet he'll let me do it." "Victoria, that's not what I meant," she replied. "You have way more clothes than Adam does. Your room was designed to be like an apartment under the house. Your closet is bigger than the trailer you used to live in. Adam just has a regular-sized closet. Even if you took all his clothes out, yours wouldn't fit. Have you ever counted how many pairs of shoes you have?" "So what's the plan?" I asked her. "We can ask someone to go to Home Depot and add another clothing rod to the other side of Adam's closet. You can keep your 20 or 30 favorite outfits in here and maybe 10 or 12 pairs of shoes. The rest can stay where they are or go in one or two of the other closets on this floor." "What about my TV?" I asked. "Adam has a nice flat screen right there," she replied. "Yeah, but mine is much bigger," I said. "Who cares?" she said. "Besides, from the way you were chatting all night, I doubt you'll be watching much TV anyway." I was 23 years old, and I was in love. This time, it felt real. It wasn't just about escaping my parents. These were the best 2 years of my life. Adam and I were always together. We took trips. We went out. We stayed inside. After being together for 2 years, I felt like we were just beginning to explore what we could become. The next winter, Adam got sick. It wasn't serious, just the flu, but he felt weak and cranky. When I had the flu, he stayed home and took care of me. He never left my side. I wanted to do the same for him. But when he started to feel better, things became a bit chaotic. I had just come out of the shower when I saw him trying to get up. "Adam, lie back down," I told him. "I need to get my iPad," he said. "I'll get it," I replied. "Where is it?" "It's in the office on my desk," he said. For more than 6 months, all the security systems had been off. I had the freedom to go where I wanted. I even had a car. It was a shiny new Cadillac XLR convertible. I gently placed a blanket around Adam, ensuring he was comfortable. I thought about why he wanted his iPad since he was going back to sleep anyway. But I cared for him, so I decided to find it. I looked around the office trying to spot it. I had played with his iPad a lot while we were on vacation, so I knew what it looked like. I just didn't know where it was hidden in the office. The case he had made it blend in like a regular notebook. I hadn't spent much time there, so I started searching. I noticed that, like at work, Adam never turned off his computer. As I was about to leave, his computer beeped with a new email alert. My curiosity got the best of me, so I glanced at the screen to see who it was from. It was from Tella. She mentioned she was coming back early from her vacation. Her family was getting on her nerves. I smiled because Tella and I had become friends by then, but Tella was very serious and followed the rules, so spending time with her older parents was probably stressful for her. Of course, my curiosity got me into a bit of trouble. I spotted a folder on Adam's desktop labeled V Family. I opened the folder. I was the only one at home. Inside, I found a bunch of emails and reports about what my family was doing. It felt odd. Why would Adam check on my family? I clicked on a file called TV Show, and a video started playing. The video was about missing people and what their families were doing to find them. There was a part about me. It showed how hard my family had been looking for me. I felt terrible. At the same time, I was frustrated with Adam for not telling me. I was in shock when I saw an interview with Zeke. He expressed how much he missed me and how much he cared for me. He appeared quite emotional during the interview. My heart raced. Then I saw an interview with my sister and everything changed. She also talked about how much she loved me. It was surprising because Tammy and I had never been very close. She had often teased me and called me names because, even though I was older, she was always bigger than me. On TV, she looked enormous, but seeing her upset over me made me angry. After all, she was family. The surprise came when she introduced her daughter to the camera, saying she had named her after me. She named a baby after me. The whole show made it sound like I was lost or even dead somewhere. That was when I knew I had to go back home. I said goodbye to Adam and left him a note. I wrote that I needed to return to my family and that he could trust me. I promised I wouldn't tell the police anything about him. I didn't pack any bags because if I showed up with a lot of clothes, it might look strange. I also didn't take my car. I called a taxi instead. As soon as I stepped out of the house, I started to cry. I realized that I was probably making a mistake. I think I felt this way because I cared deeply for Adam, but I also needed to see my family and reassure them that I was okay. My plan was to go home, stay for 2 or 3 days, and then return to Adam. At least my family would know I loved them and that I was safe. Adam also understood how much I cared for him, and I was sure he would be supportive when I returned. However, we would need to discuss why he never mentioned my family. I got out of the taxi in front of the police station, which was just half a mile from the trailer park. I walked to the desk in the small station and saw Bud Jenkins, the patrolman from 2 years ago when I went missing. Now he was the desk sergeant. "Hey, Bud," I said. "I made it back." He looked up and smiled. "Yes, ma'am," he replied. "What can I do for you?" "Bud, it's me," I said. He smiled again, and it was clear he didn't recognize me. "What are you thinking right now?" I asked. "Be honest with me." "To be truthful and without any offense, ma'am, I'm just curious about what you want. When someone from the community comes down here with a problem, I often have to send out a few of my guys to search for a lost pet. I'll even look for your pet because if I don't, my budget gets cut when you tell your husband, and then he talks to his friends in power. So, do you have any pictures of your pet?" "Why do you think I'm someone from the wealthy community?" I chuckled. "Well, you're as lovely as a beautiful sunrise," he replied. "Your shoes probably cost more than what I earn in a month. That bracelet could likely pay for my trailer, and your gorgeous hair must have been done by a fancy stylist. Anyone can see you come from privilege, and not many people have that around here." "Hey, it's me," I said. "It's Victoria Bailey, or Victoria Lake now that I'm married to Ezekiel Lake." He looked at me again. "Vicky," he said. "My name is Victoria," I replied firmly. "Just making sure," he said, looking surprised. "You never let anyone use a short name for you." When he said that, I remembered how much I liked it when Adam called me Tori. It made me feel a certain closeness to him. A tear fell as I thought about how I had left him when he needed support. Bud started asking me a lot of questions. He called in his superiors, and they reached out to the district attorney. They tried to contact my family but didn't get any answers. "The phone is probably off," Bud said. The district attorney scheduled a press conference, expressing frustration about unreliable communications in rural areas. Bud said he would drive me home and bring me back in time for the press conference the DA had set up. We climbed into Bud's old Jeep Cherokee. I hesitated to sit in it because I was concerned about a wet spot on the seat getting on my skirt. Bud quickly placed some towels on the seat, and off we went. When we reached the trailer park, I shook my head in disappointment. It was even more run down than I remembered. There were a few new trailers that I didn't recognize, and some looked well kept because their owners cared for them. But most of them appeared to be poorly constructed and in bad shape. I remembered how Tella used to joke that my closet was bigger than some of these trailers, and she was right. Bud and I stepped out in front of Zeke's trailer. The whole place looked like it was sagging into the ground unevenly. Even though I had been gone for more than 2 years, the same old cinder block was still being used as a step because Zeke didn't want to spend money on a real porch. In front of the trailer, there was a worn-out baby bed with a baby who was less than a year old crying in it. Nearby, a little girl who looked to be about 2 years old was wandering around by herself. She sat on the ground, picked a dandelion, and tried to put it in her mouth. I quickly grabbed it and took it away from her. "Victoria," I said gently, "you can't eat dirty weeds. They could make you sick." Bud looked at me like I was being silly. I was also puzzled about why my niece was just roaming around in front of Zeke's trailer. When I opened the door to the trailer, the smell almost made me gag. I heard some strange noises coming from inside. As I looked around the room, I was shocked by what I saw. I'm not shocked by the empty beer bottles all over the floor or the mess in the place. What really surprised me was what I saw in the corner. My husband, Zeke, who had been missing me, was clearly distracted from looking for me. He and my sister Tammy were sharing some laughter and enjoying each other's company. Zeke?" Bud said multiple times until Zeke finally noticed us. Zeke turned to us and quickly adjusted his appearance. He gave Tammy a lighthearted pat and told her he would be back soon. Tammy remained where she was. "Hurry up," she replied. Zeke came over and smiled at me before talking to Bud. "Hey, Bud," he said. "I didn't do anything wrong." "But Zeke," Bud started to respond. "Wow, I didn't know that was against the law," Bud said. "I saw everyone else doing it and thought it was okay." "Zeke, I'm here because of her," Bud said sharply. "What kind of job is it?" Zeke asked. "I'm not really allowed to work. I'm on disability, and if they find out, they'll stop my—" "Zeke, you silly country guy, don't you know who this woman is?" Bud said. "She's just a nice, rich city lady who wants to hire me, right?" Zeke replied. "And she is really pretty, too." "She's not that pretty," Tammy said as she walked over and took Zeke's arm, as if she was marking her territory. I recognized that because I had done the same with Adam at a few parties we attended over the past couple of years. The easiest way for a woman to show another woman that a man was taken was to hug him or lean against him when others were around. If I hadn't been so shocked from seeing my husband with my sister, it would have really upset me. "Tammy, why was Victoria running around in front of the trailer?" I asked. "Victoria?" said Tammy. "My daughter's name isn't Victoria. It's Tammy with an I. The only Victoria I know was my sister, who left Zeke and took his beer money. But she's gone now." "But that's what you said her name was on that TV show," I stammered. "None of that was real," Tammy laughed. "We were just acting. They paid us $200 to say that stuff. Honestly, nobody ever looked for Victoria. She was my sister, but she had a big attitude and thought too highly of herself. Nobody missed her, and we didn't look for her. To be honest, her leaving was a blessing. It really made things simpler around here. I was already expecting Zeke's first child when she vanished. We would have had a hard time explaining that situation. But just when we needed it, she disappeared like magic. It was as if she was gone in an instant. Good riddance." Tammy glanced at Bud, who was shaking his head and motioning for her to be quiet. "Tammy, this is your sister Victoria," Bud said finally. "We found her!" Zeke and Tammy's mouths dropped open as they stared at me. Although they were both shocked, they reacted in very different ways. "Oh, no!" exclaimed Tammy. "Welcome back, dear," Zeke said, opening his arms. "I can't believe the police found you before I did." "That was probably because you never even tried to find her," Tammy shot back. "She set the baby down on the ground outside." "Tammy, she's going to eat grass," I said. "It's not your concern what she eats," Tammy snapped. "I'm not sleeping on that couch. I'll take you on. Let's settle this right here." "Check it out," said Zeke. "I'm the most attractive guy in the park. I've got 2 girls arguing over me. The winner gets to hang out with me first." Tammy clenched her fists just as Bud stepped in between us. Everyone, the family reunion will have to wait. We need to go back to the police station right now. The DA wants to have a press conference." A few minutes later, I was standing in front of a camera next to the DA. He looked a bit shy, but was smiling for the cameras as he talked about how hard he worked to find me and how his office teamed up with the FBI to track me down. He explained that, with my help, they would start looking for the men who were responsible. As they moved me next to Zeke and Tammy, Tammy shifted away from me, making it clear she didn't want to be close. Zeke, however, tried to get close to me whenever he could. Then, he finally did it. He pulled me toward him, and I could smell something unpleasant. His rough cheek brushed against my skin, and he moved his hand in a way that made me uncomfortable. I reacted, and a couple of the FBI agents came over to see what was happening. The FBI agents took me with them to ask me questions. They wanted to know where I had been and if I could identify any of the men involved. I repeated the same things again and again. I hadn't seen anyone because they always covered my head. I was kept in a dark basement until I managed to escape. I couldn't remember any voices since there were so many of them. I just wanted to be left alone. The two agents stepped out of the room, but I could still hear them speaking through a small gap in the door. "She's probably so scared about what happened to her that she can't talk," said one of them. "Yeah, she thinks that if she names them, they will come after her again. It's not like we were ever going to find her. No one knows anything. How did her sister say it on that silly TV show? It was like she vanished into thin air. And she is obviously not telling us the truth because she's afraid," the first man said again. "Did you see her tan? She must have just come back from Florida." "Right. And what about all that ice? Who takes someone and then treats them well? Maybe she didn't get kidnapped at all. Maybe she just ran away and now she's back." "Let's go with that for the official report," said the second man. "We'll tell the family that we're looking into it or something, but honestly, I have better things to do." I wished I could take that bracelet for evidence. It could help me pay off a big part of my house loan. They walked down the hall, still talking about me. By the time the FBI let me leave, everyone had gone except for Bud and a few other officers. Bud drove me back to the trailer park again. When I got there, I tried to open the door to the trailer, but it wouldn't move. The odd thing was that the lock had never worked. I pushed against the door with all my strength, and it gave a little. That's when I saw that Tammy was standing in front of the door, trying to keep me out. Then I heard a loud noise from inside the trailer, and I was sure something had happened between Zeke and my sister. The door opened, and he stepped aside. He looked at me with anger, but noticed Bud outside. "We'll come back to check on you in the morning," Bud said. Zeke seemed to consider this. "I'm going to let you get away with that because I know you're not thinking clearly," said Zeke, looking me over. "You crossed a line," I replied. He looked confused. "You mean when I pulled you close?" he asked. "I'm your husband. You need to remember that now that you're back. Things won't be like they were before. I won't put up with you and your smart mouth." In that moment, I realized I had been mistaken. I had thought Adam kept my family from me because he was afraid I would leave. Now I saw that he knew the truth and was trying to protect me. For over 2 years, he had treated me like I was the most important person in his life, and I had left him without letting him explain. I had made a huge mistake. As we stood there, I noticed Zeke was still staring at me. He was taking in everything around him. I could almost hear his mind working hard. He wanted my jewelry and anything else he could sell, and he wanted to be close to me. He seemed tired of my sister, and we were still legally married. Even though he had 2 kids with Tammy, he would easily push her aside and move on. In a few years, I could end up just like the woman from my dream. I'd be another woman in the trailer park, weighed down by responsibilities, with 5 or 6 children and no hope for the future. "You can sleep on the couch tonight," he said, "while I talk to your sister. But since we're married, tomorrow night I'll move you back into the bedroom with me." The walls and doors of the trailer were very thin. I could hear Zeke and Tammy arguing. The fight ended as usual with Zeke shouting, "Because I said so," followed by a loud noise, and then everything went quiet. A few minutes later, I was surprised to hear Tammy's voice. "Can we still hang out?" she asked. "Yeah, sometimes," he replied. "You know you'll have to work to get her to like you," she said. "Probably just at first," he said. "After that, she'll be okay like she usually is." "But she doesn't enjoy it," Tammy said. "There's something off about her. There always has been." "What about now?" she asked. "Now what?" he responded. Can we do it now? She complained. They were both pretending. I loved being close to Adam. We shared a bond that felt strong and comforting, but what they did was very different. Zeke was quick and uninterested in any real connection. Later that night, I heard the bedroom door open. I couldn't fall asleep anyway. With all the noise from their frequent interactions and Tammy talking badly about me to my husband, I just couldn't close my eyes. Tammy was making sure Zeke knew she favored him. Every time they were together, she reminded him that it was his love she was sharing. A few seconds after the door opened, I felt a touch on my wrist. I jumped up from the couch. Zeke, what are you doing? I asked. I was just checking on you, he said with a smile. Stop lying, I replied. I'm not as foolish as my sister. You were trying to take my bracelet. No, I wasn't, he said, still smiling. He genuinely believed his charm would sway me. Zeke, this bracelet is valuable enough that if it went missing, you'd be in serious trouble. You'd be in trouble for a long time. You can't send your own husband to jail, she said with a sly smile. Actually, I could, I replied firmly. Well, you should consider someone other than yourself, he said. That little item could really help your family if you weren't so selfish. I think it's worth at least $500. Are you out of your mind? I exclaimed. It cost way more than that. Well, I'm not a math expert, he admitted, but I knew it was expensive. The next day, my brother Reb came over, and of course he supported Zeke. He spent a lot of time cautioning Tammy not to harm me or try to make me unwell, and he kept glancing at us with a grin. I finally realized that he thought the three of us would bond in a way that made me uncomfortable. Just the thought made me feel uneasy. The whole family got together and we had some kind of barbecue. They kept staring at my jewelry, which I had worn for 2 days. When I heard Zeke telling Reb that tonight was significant, I felt very uneasy. Everyone came over to check if I was all right. I hugged my stomach and started to tear up. I think they realized the food didn't sit well with me, so they stepped back. After the family left, I sat on a cinder block in front of the trailer trying to rest. Are you coming to bed? Zeke asked. Not yet, I replied. My stomach still hurts. I don't want to get sick. Why don't you rest with Tammy once more? He grumbled, but went back inside. I waited until I heard the bed creaking before I went in and slept on the couch, hiding my bracelet in my clothes. The next morning, I was up as soon as it got light. Zeke came out of the bedroom and shot me a mean look. Where's the bracelet? He asked. Why do you want to know? I replied. I just want to see it, he said. I need to talk to the DA again this morning, I explained. Bud is picking me up at 9. He wants me to show his wife my bracelet. Zeke seemed to understand. How did you get that and come back with all that stuff? He asked. I just shrugged. Why are you up so early? He asked again. I wanted to go to the store and buy you some beer, I said. I noticed last night at the barbecue that you're almost out. That's how a good wife should act, he smiled. Can I take the truck? I asked. The truck doesn't work, he replied. It needs a new engine. That's why I thought about selling your bracelet. Fixing the truck would cost way more than my disability checks, and we really need that truck. It's been broken for a year. Okay, then I'll just walk, I said. Can you ask Tammy to go with me so we can carry 2 cases back? Sure, I'll wake her up, he said with a grin. I had asked him to send Tammy so he would know I was really coming back. On the walk to 7-Eleven, Tammy didn't say a single word to me. So, sis, why do you dislike me? I asked. Even when we were kids, you always seemed to have a problem with me. That's because you were always telling me what to do, Tammy shot back. And everywhere I went, people compared us, and I always felt like I was overshadowed. Every single person I met told me how beautiful you were, and you acted like you were so much better. When the other kids went out to hang out, you decided not to go and wouldn't let me go either. She just glared at me. When our friends went out on weekends, I couldn't go. You waited until you were married so people didn't want to be with me. You were supposed to be my sister, not my guardian. Tammy, maybe I should have found a kinder way to say it, I told her. I did what I did because I cared about you and wanted the best for you. You were my little sister. I truly believed that you could achieve anything you wanted. You were special and much better than those mean kids. Really? She asked. Yes, I said. We walked a bit longer and then she stopped me. Victoria, what are we going to do about Zeke? She asked. Tammy, Zeke is your problem, not mine. I'm not involved with him, I told her. Victoria, I care about Zeke. I have 2 kids with him and I'm expecting again. But you're my sister, so I need to tell you something. Zeke might take your things and try to control you. He thinks he can have 2 partners and... She started to cry, and this time it felt real. Don't worry about it, I said. I'm not going back there. What about the beverages? She asked. I just shook my head. Forget the drinks, Tammy. Just stay here for a bit, then go home. Tell Zeke that I'm not around right now. Tell him it was a group of visitors from Canada. You can tell they were Canadian because they kept saying A after everything. If they ask for names, say one was named Doug Mackenzie. I gave her a hug and started walking down the street. When I reached the 7-Eleven, I looked around until I found Chester. He was the manager now. I pulled him aside. Hi, Chester, I said. I just came by to give you a heads up before I tell on you. Prison isn't easy for guys like you. What are you talking about? He asked, looking confused. Chester, can't you see who I am? I replied. He stared at my face and his mouth fell open in surprise. Victoria? He asked. Why are you talking about jail? Because you were the one who helped with what happened to me, I said. The authorities are looking for the people involved. I don't know any of them, but I can tell them about you. He started to panic. Tears streamed down his face right there in the store. Chester, let's get to the point, I said. If you give me a ride, I'll let you go. Do you have a car? He just nodded. We got into his car, an old Buick that looked really worn. I had to keep the door shut while we drove. I knew where I lived, but I wasn't sure how to get there, so we drove around for a bit. Suddenly, I spotted our house. I asked Chester to stop at the gate. I got out and walked toward the gate. This was where my story began. 2 men came out and told us to leave right away. I told them I needed to see Adam and wouldn't go without talking to him. One of the men started to call the authorities. I told Chester to drive off before the call was completed. As we got back on the road, I saw that they were moving things out of the house. I looked in the rearview mirror and watched as some of my belongings were taken away. It hurt a lot. Chester drove me downtown to the building where Adam worked. The guard at the entrance started to tell us to leave. I leaned out of the window and smiled at him. He recognized me from the many times I had visited. He lifted the gate and let us through. Chester stayed with the car while I went in through the back entrance, just like I always did when I came to see Adam at work. I remembered the last time I was here when I had talked Adam into spending time with me at the office. The guards barely looked at me as I waved and walked by. I greeted some of the workers on the shop floor, making sure to stay outside the area where they needed safety glasses. I took the elevator up to the 3rd floor and walked nervously toward Adam's office. When I stepped inside, I saw the back of a person in a business suit. The woman seemed very busy. Is he feeling better or is he still unwell? I asked. Why do you care? She replied without stopping what she was doing. I made a mistake, I explained. I want to make things right. I wasn't ready for what happened next. In a quick move, she stood up and pushed me against the wall. How are you going to do that? She yelled. Her face was full of anger as she confronted me. Let her go, Angie, said Tella calmly from behind us. He wouldn't have wanted this. He cared deeply for her. What do you mean by that? I asked. Victoria, don't you watch the news? She replied. Adam is gone. You might as well have heard him yourself. I warned you about how fragile he was. I told you he wouldn't survive it a second time. The day after you left, he took his own life. Angie really wants to confront you. But I think maybe by the end, you were not just pretending. I believe you cared for him a little too. So it will be hard for you to live with what you did to a person who tried so hard to make you happy. Angie led me away from the wall. He lived for you, Victoria, she said. And in the end, he lost everything because of you. Just go, Victoria. You bring bad luck. I walked out of the building through the same door I entered. Chester was outside, waiting for me with the engine running. Back to the park and you're free, I told him. You're going back there? He asked, surprised. Why not? I replied. Where else can I go? I stepped out of the car and walked into the trailer. I arrived just in time to hear Zeke raising his voice at Tammy. What do you mean she got taken again? He asked loudly. A group of Canadians took her, Tammy explained softly, looking worried. How do you know they were Canadians? He demanded. Because they kept saying "A" after everything, Tammy said. And one of them had a hockey stick. Here's the beer, I said as I walked into the room. What happened with the Canadians? Zeke asked, still focused on Tammy. Calm down, Zeke, I told him. They were just my friends playing a joke. Where's my bracelet? He asked, sounding upset. I put it somewhere safe, I replied. It doesn't really suit you. I think you're more of a purse person. There you go with your sarcasm again, he snapped. I'd rather be sarcastic than foolish, I responded, and his frustration grew. Where is the bracelet? He pressed. Why do you care, Zeke? I asked. It's not even yours and you're not getting it back. You're so selfish, he yelled. We were happier when we thought you were gone. Yeah, I think I'd be better off gone too, I replied. At least then I'd be with someone who cares about me. I see now that I need to teach you what a woman's role should be, he said. Go ahead, Zeke, I said, sitting down. You can say whatever you want. You won't make me feel worse than I already do. Are you talking about another guy? Zeke shouted. You were with someone else while I waited for you? Every chance I got, I said, rolling my eyes. You should have seen it. Zeke grew angrier. I can't believe you did this to me. A husband shouldn't have to worry about his wife being with other men. Zeke, you were with my sister while I was gone, I pointed out. That's not the same, he replied. A man should always keep his options open. That's what the Bible says. Where does it say that? I asked. It's in the part about fishing, he mumbled. You know, the story about Jesus being a fisherman and all that. You sure know a lot about nonsense, I said. His anger flared, and he raised his hand as if to intimidate me. I looked up at him calmly, and then I felt a presence. I'm Canadian, said Adam, stepping into the situation. You're the guy she's been with, aren't you? Yelled Zeke. Tammy, get my gun! You don't have any bullets, Zeke, Tammy replied. Just get the gun, Zeke insisted. You're not hurt? I asked, smiling at Adam. Nope, he said. Tella was just trying to freak you out and make you think we were all gone. You didn't tell anyone about me? Nope, I said. I told you that you could count on me. I care about you, Adam. I just get a little silly sometimes. I should have talked to you, I thought. You thought I was trying to keep you away from your family? He asked. I was. Yeah, I get it now, I said. Do you know that they were not truthful in that video? They don't care about me. No one even looked for me. I was, he said. I've been searching for you my whole life. Oh, someone is feeling good tonight, I joked lightly. Stop right there, said Zeke, attempting to assert himself, but Adam quickly intervened. Zeke stood there looking puzzled, not understanding how things had shifted. Tammy laughed at him, adding to his confusion. In a moment of frustration, he tried to confront Adam but stumbled awkwardly, losing his balance. Tammy, call for help, he shouted. Bye, Tam, I said. I'm going home now. But this is your home, she replied. You and Zeke are a couple. No, Tam, I said. You need to understand the situation better. I took Adam's hand and smiled at him. Can we go home now? I asked. He smiled back. We'll have to stay in the tent for a bit, he said. All our furniture is still in the truck on its way to North Carolina. I'll call them back, but we won't have our things for a few days. Zeke continued to call out as we got into the car and drove away. Come back with my spouse. The phone doesn't work, Zeke, she replied. Well, run down the street and... he started to say. Zeke, I care about you, she said, but I can't run. I'm not feeling well. They kept exchanging words as we drove off. In the end, everyone got what they wanted. Everyone, that is, except for Zeke, who faced the consequences of his actions. I got Adam. After I stopped taking my birth control pills, Adam and I became parents. We were very happy together. Zeke and I got a divorce because he wanted to be with Tammy. They had 3 kids, and getting married was important for them to stay a family. Zeke depended on Tammy quite a lot. He had a serious accident that left him unable to walk. The good part is that Zeke now receives the assistance he needs. However, since his accident happened at home and not at work, his support funds are less than before. Tammy still cares for Zeke. To help with finances, she took a job that provided support for families. The trouble is that Tammy has always enjoyed being close to others, and since Zeke can't do that anymore, it was only a matter of time before she started inviting new friends to spend time with. Zeke doesn't like it, but there's nothing he can do. Tella surprisingly decided to stop pursuing a relationship with Adam and married Damon instead. They still help us, but they don't visit the house anymore. Adam planned to take the security system out of the house since we didn't need it now. I told him to hold off on that for a bit. I had a feeling our daughter might cause some trouble and we might need to keep a close watch on her. Hey audience, if you like this video and want to keep up with more thrilling stories, make sure to subscribe to Prince Cheating Tales and hit the notification bell. You don't want to miss out on our upcoming adventures. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next wonderful story.